Hey everybody, it's Rajesh here.
Intane here.
Welcome to our podcast, Baskets of Knowledge, Chats with a Difference. In our podcast, we invite guests from around the country and around the world to talk about how they got to where they're at the moment. It's about a journey, it's about an experience, it's about their life.
Okay, kia ora koutou everybody. Welcome to another episode of Baskets of Knowledge. For those of you that are listening for the first time, welcome. For those of you that have been joining us for a long time, thank you for joining us. And hopefully you'll find tonight's and this evening's or this afternoon's session as enjoyable and as informative as you found our other ones. As always, we start off with a bit of a reflection piece. Unfortunately, Tana is not with us today. He's away in Christchurch driving his team over to some crazy rugby competition. It is great for him and his wahine toa that he's representing. So my reflection piece from this week is thinking about the question why. So when I talk about this year, we all hear, about Simon Sinek's Golden Circle. Think about your why you're doing whatever you do. And I think that's really important. Without a why, things become really challenging and really hard, which I think is great in that space there. But my reflection this week was when we ask a why question to somebody. And my reflection about that is when you ask somebody a why question, as opposed to not what their why is, when you ask them a why question, it puts them into a possible a negative statement. And I'll give you an example. So if I speak to someone and says, why was your work not up to a certain standard? Immediately they get defensive and they get comparing. And I had to think about this quite a bit because you have to demarcate the difference between what your why is versus asking why questions. And unfortunately, I find that in society, whether your work, relationships, at school, when someone asks you why, you feel like you've got to defend yourself. So my reflection piece about that was, hey, let's think about what other question we can ask instead of a why. So, what or how. And that's a hard way for us to do because humans are wired to go, why are you not doing this here? Why is it this way here? So that is my reflection piece. But hey, we're not here to hear my monologue. If you want that, you can go listen to Jimmy Kimmel or to all those crazy late night hosts who we are not talking about today. We're here to speak to a fantastic guest. For our listeners out there who are regular, you know that we scour the country and the world to find people that we think are interesting. We think everyone's interesting. We think everyone's got a story to tell. And today's guest just as interesting and as amazing as every other guest we've had. I've had the pleasure of just getting connected with our guest a few weeks ago through mutual connections. And I think this is the power of LinkedIn. Those of you that have heard this podcast many times, I troll LinkedIn literally to find some interesting people. And our guest this week has done some good things. And as you all know, we do some research, and I think we'll learn a lot about our guest today. So without further ado, and without further ado, I'm going to welcome and thank our guest Sanskruti on the Boston College. Welcome, Sanskruti.
Awesome. Kia ora. I'm Sanskruti. Did you want me to say a little bit about myself?
Yeah, tell us who you are. Tell us who you are at this point in time.
So I think the way I've been describing myself to people lately is kind of like Dr. Seuss. I wear a lot of different hats. I do a lot of different things, and sometimes people hear one thing and they don't expect to hear the other hats that I wear. So I'll take you through a few of those. So I am a law and commerce student right now at the University of Auckland. I love problem solving. I think that's what makes me very excited and engaged in this degree. I do a lot of community work outside of uni, so I'm very passionate about advocacy, whether it's civics education for rangatahi, whether it's women's rights. And on the other side, I'm also creative. So I love writing poetry, I love dancing, and I kind of like to fuse everything in one bubble, and that is a change-making bubble. So anything that's making change, anything that is allowing me to make change, whether it's through creating or through leadership or through anything like that, I am super, super passionate about. And that's me in kind of a nutshell.
I love that. And what I love about that is it's the two paradoxes, problem solving, but also creativity, which people think are two separate things. But if you think about it, all artists are problem solvers. And a great analogy I have is I heard it the other day was when a sculptor sees a rock and they create something out of the rock. I'm like, how does that actually happen? You just see a rock and go, hey, you think of Michelangelo's Madonna. You're like, what? How did that actually happen? So it's really awesome that you have that those two things that you work on. Sanskruti, let's talk about you. You know, you wear so many hats, and we'll try and cover as many as possible today. But again, they're all intertwined. You know, they're hats, but they're all hats, but they're on one head. So the common factor is the fact that it's all part of you as a human being. And I guess we'll first start with your involvement with DAM. How did that start off, and what is your motivation for being part of that fantastic um, collective, I guess?
Yeah, so Dear M is a really awesome collective. M basically stands for the reflection of me. So it's the word me, but in flip.
Ah,
So we're kind of trying to make young women see themselves reflected in us in some sort of way. At its core, it's a mental health crisis and sexual violence advocacy organization. So we had a lot of work in the past on consent law reform, and we're still fighting for that. So, those victims have their voice and they have recovery and they have options to be part of a community where they're healing. And then a lot of our team members undertake different projects. So essentially anything you're passionate about, or as one of our mentors and colleagues, Imogen, says, if you're angry about anything, let me know and we'll make something out of it. And so for me, I guess my niche in Dear M is South Asian representation. I'm obviously the daughter of an immigrant family. And so just I like to kind of help people with the idea of transitioning between different countries and how they can find home, how they can not lose their cultural identity, and how South Asians can kind of find their own voices in communities that might not maybe give them as much representation as they need growing up. So that's kind of like my little niche under Dear M, but it's a really awesome and empowering space where it's a lot of wahine just supporting each other to do really cool things.
oh, beautiful. And what is your why to get involved with DAM? You know, the reason I ask is because there's so much happening out there. You could have just been another young person that's just seen this is very cool. Read the read the
Yeah,
read the episodes and be like, okay, cool. What made you go, actually, I want to be part of this?
yeah. As what made me want to be part of Dear M?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think honestly, like this sounds so like blunt, but it was just genuinely getting angry about things and not having a platform to do anything. I think when I joined, I would have been about a couple of years younger. So I would have been maybe 19, 20. And I was just getting really frustrated at how young people at that point did not have much of a seat on the table. And oftentimes, you would get kind of diminishing views where it's like, oh, what's your dream? And I would say to change the world. And they're like, oh, that's overrated. And I wanted to hear something, I wanted to hear someone be like, no, that's actually so valid. Like you can totally change a part of the world. And I had seen kind of ads for Dear M floating around, and a few people that I knew had done it. And so then I was like, this seems like an organization that would kind of help me not only achieve what I want to in the community, but also help me grow as an individual. And so then when I went, I think the first thing that kind of came as like a culture shock to me is the fact that the people who were meant to be our seniors just started addressing us immediately as colleagues. And I think that was such a beautiful way to break the ice, because even though these people are older, they're more experienced, they have more training and education, they immediately brought us to the same level as them, and they kind of grounded themselves to our level. So we were able to collaborate really, really easily straight off the bat.
And that's so true. You know, first impressions matter, and that first impression for you was a positive one, which is beautiful. You know, really. You spoke about anger being a motivator. At that point in time, if you think about when you were 19 or 20, what was maybe, I guess, one of the things that really got you angry?
Yeah. Um, I think I think there was quite a few different things. I think one of the main ones was maybe not seeing as many voices that I wanted, whether it was from my culture or just females in general, represented in politics. So it was funny because when I was that age, I always liked to say, oh, I'm not interested in politics. But then I realized soon that it inevitably, by doing this work, like anybody, if they live in a country, they inevitably almost are. And so it was kind of me wanting to see more young people and more perspectives that were supporting things like climate change or things like affordable housing in Auckland. And that was one part of my frustration. The other part was looking around me at that point and not seeing many South Asians in powerful positions. So in my law degree, it can still be quite isolating being a South Asian, because I feel like the majority of my people do tend to navigate towards med and engineering. And so it definitely is a little bit of a isolating experience. So I kind of want to see more strong South Asian females, especially in law and commerce and just in advocacy spaces, just taking up space. I was very lucky to come from a household where loudness was very encouraged for females. All the women in my house are very outspoken, very stubborn, very headstrong. But I know that a lot of my friends did not have the same experience, and it was always, like your voice like should be quieter, or you shouldn't be saying these things, or you should just be focusing on, like growing up, getting married, finding a husband, maybe working a job if you need to, and that's it. And that just made me so unbelievably angry. So I wanted to be in a space where it was almost a complete opposite. Yeah.
And that's a testament to your whānau and your family as well for that, because I come from a Southeast Asian background, and I've seen a lot of my extended cousins go through the same, especially females. They have an expectation, but even males, same thing as well. It's both sides, But whereas for the females, obviously, there's a lot more to lose in terms of that tick box, and it's really quite crazy not living in that environment. And also, my parents are as supportive as that said, let's forget about that for a second and think about who you as an individual. So it's pretty fantastic seeing that your family are supportive in that day, and the fact that you have a dad who has to put up and engage with loud, proud, and strong wahine in the household, which is really cool.
Yeah.
And what I love about wherever I've read about you is you really strongly identify and I'm proud of your culture. Everywhere that I've read, you just go, "Hey, Bengali Tamil." You just put it out there. What is that? Is that something that identity or that you hold very proud? Has it come naturally, or was there any point in your life? Actually, wait a minute. This is who I am, and I'm proud to be. I'm proud to put it out there. Actually,
Yeah. But that's such a good question, because I feel like a lot of South Asians, a lot of people I know included, go through this huge insecurity phase when they're younger. And like this, again, like I talk in a very unfiltered way, so don't mind that. But it's always like, I
that's
feel like
fine.
all brown people go through the "I wish I was white" phase. And it always happens when you're young. And again, like, I don't think it happened to me because culture was so infused in my household and my surroundings, but it's almost like I went through it without realizing until I was older in the small ways. So like a very simple example is in South India, it's very common, and generally in India as well, to oil your hair. And so when I went to primary school, my hair would always be oiled, quite literally for hair quality, because it's so thick that even to this day, if I don't oil it, I end up looking like absolutely ridiculous. So oiling it and having it going to school. And I just remember like a white girl coming up to me and being like, "Oh, like that smells so bad." How can it smell bad when it's coconut oil? Like, it literally
Yeah,
has no
totally.
smell. I just remember being so sad. And like, I never oiled my hair again all the way up until high school. And I realized that I had made these little subtle changes, whether it was the food I carried in my lunchbox or the way I presented myself. And then I think it finally hit me in about high school, even though I was still appreciating my culture through things like dance and language. Like, that was always there. So I think my experience was a little less isolating than other people. But it's almost like in year 9, this thing snapped in me to reclaim my heritage and learn more about who I was. And so then I kind of went into like this rampage mode of like finding out more about my culture, but almost like in my own way. So it's like I already knew a lot about my culture from a historical and educational perspective, because like, again, my parents had done a really good job at that. But I wanted to kind of, I feel like infusing yourself into culture is very different from learning. And so in that infusion process, the first thing I did is I decided to randomly learn Hindi. So I don't think people know this, but South Indians do not speak Hindi traditionally. Like, they speak either, Telugu, Malayali, Tamil. And so because my dad is Bengali, and my mom spoke fluent Bengali, our household language became Bangla. So I always spoke English and Bangla, and then I understood Tamil. But then suddenly I was like, no, I want to like invest more into Hindi. And so I kind of rewatched all the Bollywood movies I'd grown up with. And I still to this day credit my, like, honestly, 9 out of 10 Hindi to Shah Rukh Khan. Like, he has been my teacher, and I just had to switch it to a female tense. So I invested in like movies. I started listening to songs. I started kind of looking at Urdu poetry to draw inspiration. I started kind of looking at the roots of my culture and what I kind of get from each side. And I realized that a lot of strong women come from Tamil Nadu, and a lot of creativity comes from Bengal, and that my ancestors also wrote poetry, they sang, they danced. And I think from that point on, like, I obviously had the pride. Now that pride was a lot stronger. Then there was this thing of just people, like even people in your own community, just not being educated. And it really bothered me because I was so proud about my culture and people were still mistaking my identity. So common questions would be, "Oh, you speak Bengali, you must be from Bangladesh." And it's like, no, that's like a different country entirely. Or like, oh, like you must be Pakistani. And it's like, oh my gosh, like I would actually get out a map and be like, let's have a look at some geography. And I don't think people realize how beautifully diverse India is even within India and how different the languages are. And so I just felt like I had to kind of make it very clear into every space I went. I'm Bengali from Kolkata and I'm Tamilian from India. And I'm also Kiwi because obviously I live here. So I think that's why that's kind of a very long-winded story as to why I'm always very proud about those two sides. Yeah.
No, and that's a great story because it's really quite funny how people think that if you speak a certain language, you're from a certain part of the world, which is so crazy in the way we program to think about that. But also within Indian culture itself, and I'll give you an example. So whenever people see when I catch a taxi, this is going to sound really terrible, but the truth. When I catch a taxi, they see my name, Pradesh, and they go straight to, oh, what part of India are you from? I'm like, I'm not from India. I'm from Zimbabwe. They're like, but you have an Indian name. I was like, I know, but so it's really, that happens across the board, and it just cracks me up every time. So and I've just gotten used to it. I'm like, all right, cool. This is quite hilarious. But so I really resonate when you go, hey, I speak Bengali. Oh, therefore you must be Bangladesh. Oh, actually, no. India. In fact, the world is so, there are people from every country all across the world, and it's such a diverse place, which is beautiful. And you touched on something really, really beautiful there. You spoke about how in Indian culture, dance and poetry and music are really infused as part of it. It's just normalized, and this has become a part of your life as well. And how have you found that? Because you do poetry, you do dance. How does that make? I mean, not how does it make you feel? Is that something that you take because of your culture, or is it because it's you as a person that really enjoys that art form?
Yeah. That's a really good question. I think it's definitely more of me as a person. I think I wouldn't be me if I wasn't creative, but then it's obviously very interlinked to my culture, which is very lucky. So I'll do like each one. So with writing, I always enjoyed writing, like in school. Like it was kind of like English was always my favorite subject. I was that one annoying kid in high school that like loved doing like unfamiliar text in English and finding deep meanings of poems when everyone else hated it. And so I've always loved to read and do all of that. I think I started writing poetry very randomly, like in year 12 or like 11. I didn't really, it's kind of something I'm a bit more shy about. So I didn't like the idea of people seeing it. It was kind of like just something I did for me. Like if I was like saw something about the world or saw something very like philosophical and went into a chain of thought, I would kind of make it into a poem. And it was only this year actually where my best friend and then also my partner were like, your poetry, your words actually have power. Like people should be seeing these words. And so I was very lucky to get some like snippets of my poetry published as zines, which is like a creative little booklet at Auckland Art Gallery. And it just felt so surreal seeing people actually like resonating with those words. So surely someday a poetry book in the future, but I'm very grateful to my partner for motivating me to kind of put it out there and break that barrier. So yeah, poetry is very, very nice. Just I think the same thing with dance. It's just like a space for me. I think for me also as a chronic like overthinker, dance is the one time where I am not thinking about anything except the choreography. And it makes me so happy just being in the studio, being surrounded by people that are constantly hyping you up and, advocating for your growth in this intensive art medium is so, so beautiful. And again, in dance, I'm also kind of like a strange type of dancer. So I started with Bharatnatyam, which is one of the oldest dance forms. So I had a very strong base. Then I kind of transitioned into Bollywood. And then I decided to do hip hop all of a sudden. And I was very, very bad at it at the start. Like my poor best friends, Bella and Anshul, had to like watch me in the dance room looking like wanting to look like Hrithik Roshan, but very clearly not, who's a very famous Bollywood celebrity. I got there after like 7 years. And so I became very good at hip hop and I started picking up other cultural parts like Bhangra from Punjab and Garba from Gujarat. And so now I just like doing like honestly like 10 different types of dance and it's really, really fun. Yeah.
No, that's so awesome. And it's also because, there's an assumption that just because you can do one dance form, that the other dance forms come pretty easily to you, but we know that's not the case. And what made me smile there was you've gone from one of the oldest dance forms to one of the most modern dance forms, and they're such like a paradox of each other, but still the same sort of thing. They're expressing a story, which is really cool. I'm gonna come back to another question which I forgot to ask you before. Was Shah Rukh Khan was your great teacher and your great mentor? SRK, happy days. Controversial question, possibly. What do you think is his best movie?
Oh,
For you?
oh my goodness, that is such a good question. I honestly like. Okay, someone told me this was a hot take. Yeah, I have not heard anyone else say this answer. I think Veer Zara. I think Veer Zara was such a beautiful movie. Like, don't get me wrong, like I love Om Shanti Om Mehuna, but I think they're a bit cliche. And I think, as much as I love him, I don't think he's a very versatile actor. I think he can only do the melodramatic, like Shah Rukh Khan type of role. But I think Veer Zara really brought out a different side of him. We got to see him act in like a little bit more of a different way. Yeah, so I'm quite biased to Veer Zara.
Yeah, that's a great movie. You heard it here first, guys. Go have a listen to that because have a listen to the music and also have a watch. It's pretty emotional. It's a very emotive movie, you know. I remember watching it all those years ago. The other movie that I really enjoyed was when I watched Paradise. I don't know if you've seen that, but that's also another one that just like tears, tears, tears. But that's okay.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a crazy story. Sanskruti, I went to university in South Africa, and I was part of the Indian Association there, and there was a big group of us, and we're like, how do we watch Bollywood movies? Like, what do we do? Because there were a lot of us, so we're really lucky because the university allowed us to use the lecture venues to screen Bollywood movies every Thursday. So we're able
Oh
to,
wow.
so everybody, so lecture theater's got 500 seats, so every Thursday you just say, hey, this is playing, and no cost, no charge. It was really, really fantastic that our university allowed us to do it, and yeah, it's really, really beautiful. And I don't know whether it happens. I don't think it happens here, but it'd be awesome if we can. And it's not just for people that identify as Indian, but anyone that wants to come watch a Bollywood movie could just come along and enjoy that there. So yeah, there's an idea that we're
That's
hoping we
awesome.
can maybe take to Auckland and Otago and make that happen, right? Um,
No, I love
and
that. That's
amongst
awesome.
amongst all these awesome cultural things that you get involved in, the other hat that you've worn is also being part of the vice president of the UN Youth. How is that? What is, again, like you mentioned at the start, advocacy, being activist, and I guess this was a great platform for you to start seeing that, but not just for yourself, but a whole community of people that are involved in UN Youth.
Yeah. So UN Youth was awesome. It was definitely a different experience, and I think UN Youth was like the first organization that kind of sparked me into this change making space back when I was in first year of uni. So it's one of the largest youth for youth organizations, and I started with different roles, and then I was vice president in my second year, which was quite. I think I was probably the, if not one of the youngest VPs, and yeah, it was really awesome because basically there's just like thousands of different events that they do to channel like mock diplomacy forums or help Rangatahi engage in foreign affairs. And the year after I was vice president, I got to coordinate the flagship event. And so that was like a massive highlight because Auckland Model UN is so big. And I had attended it all of high school. So it was kind of like a full circle moment and a dream come true. And I think what was, I guess, unique about that is that the vision that me and my team had set out was quite different from the past AMONs. That's the short form of Auckland Model UN. Usually, I think UN youth can have a little bit of a stigma of, oh, you have to be a debater or you have to be super invested in politics to come. And so we would only get a lot of children from central Auckland coming. But then we wanted a much more diverse demographic. And so my team and I made sure to kind of go out to schools in South and West Auckland. We made sure to have very open marketing and promotions. And it was really awesome because we ended up being able to negotiate with the board for, I think, 100 Maori and Pacifica scholarships. And then the event was about 600 people. So for the first time, we had to like actually cap registrations and be like, no, like we're a grassroots organization. We can't feed any more people. And so it just felt very, very surreal. It was such an awesome event. And I think it was just testimony to the team because I got very lucky with people that were very passionate about making the vision come to life. And I think what made me most happy about that experience was just seeing like tiny little seeds planted in these high schoolers. Like I remember I had a young Indian girl come up to me. She was like in year 12 being like, oh my gosh, I want to do what you do one day. And that made my like entire year. Like it made me feel so validated that, oh my gosh, like she feels inspired and like she's going to go and do something. And I remember a group of Pacifica boys came up to me and said, you know, we never would have come if you hadn't like visited our school. We feel so empowered. Like he wants to be a diplomat. I want to be a lawyer. And just seeing that these seeds can be planted in like students when they're young is so, so amazing because they have such great capacity and potential to create change. And I think as much like hate as Gen Z gets, I think we're a very resilient generation. So it's really awesome seeing them feel empowered and like just feel like they can feel like they have that belief that they can make change. Yeah.
And I think what's really profound right there is something that I also believe in is the word believe. If one person has one person believing in them, that's it, Like, you had that one
Yeah.
young person coming to you, great program, but that one validation just changed the whole aspect for you. You could have had all your team, this is amazing, but that one young person hit home for you. And conversely, for you going into school with the Pacific young men, the fact that you made the effort to go out and speak to them speaks volumes. And I think this is where we I think sometimes we fall down, that we don't show the belief that actually, hey, I believe in your dream. Let's give it a crack. It might fail, but that's okay. Let's give it a crack before it even fails.
Mm.
And I think, like you said right at the start, sometimes we fail before we even start, or we don't even let the dream even grow a little, even grow at all. And I think it's beautiful that even if you start watering it, and then the dream might be here, but it might go this way, but get there at some point. So it's really awesome that that you see that in your space. And again, there's so much about you that we can go into. The next part I want to talk about, I guess, is you as being an editor on Kraken. What is that like? Because obviously writing is your jam, but being an editor is a whole different ballgame altogether.
Yeah. So I was an editor at Crackham last year, and then this year I'm just doing like freelance writing and work for any magazines and student magazines that I find. But being an editor was really interesting because again, it was kind of, I think there's like a trend here of me just throwing myself into roles and challenging myself. Because yeah, you're right in saying editing is very different from writing. So not only did I have to write pieces to fill up the lifestyle section, which is what I was in charge of, also reading other people's work and kind of tailoring it to what that week's issue was. Um, I think it was really fun. I think I learned a lot about like the journalism side of the world and media and all of that. And all of these, I guess, are very, I think it's chaotic because it's like people are like, what are you going to do in the future? And I'm like, even if you asked me in 10 years, I couldn't give you a definitive answer because it's like, I do want to be doing everything that I love. I still want to be writing. I still want to be like using my languages and traveling. And so I think journalism kind of opened up a new door for me. And yeah, because I was in charge of the lifestyle section, it was kind of anything that I wanted it to be. So it could have been like current affairs, it could have been things to do with fashion, it could have been student issues. And I think a very pivotal point that we had last year was during the election. So I got to interview groups like Make It 16, who were trying to lower the voting age, talk to people involved in the consent law reform campaigns, and see from a youth perspective like why they don't think that the current government is representing them. And so that was a really cool lifestyle chunk to explore. So I think what made me really interested in that was kind of being able to interview people and hear their stories. Yeah.
Oh, and that's really cool because when you hear stories, you start changing your opinions. I always think about this quote when someone says that the problem with society is we get married to our opinions or our identity, that when someone challenges it, we can't let it go. But as we start doing these podcasts and you start speaking to people, you might have an idea, but if your mind is open, you go, wait a minute, I never thought about that perspective, which is, well, it just blows you away. You're allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to change your mind. I think we're so afraid of changing our mind that we're like, oh, someone's going to judge us. But hey, actually, it's okay to change your mind. And as you were doing that, in amongst everything else that you're doing, what are some of the real passions for you that if we strip everything away and we go, hey, we've taken away your dancing, all that kind of stuff, what is the thing that really drives you to be you and do your thing every day?
Yeah. I think I think that links to right back to what you were saying at the start, right? Like it's a very daunting question asking someone what their why is, but it's so important because it underpins like I guess the essence of who you are. And I think for me, like in very simple words, I just want to like leave a legacy behind. So I kind of want to build up all these different things. And so like even when I'm gone, this legacy will still exist and just lots of people can be inspired by it and be like, okay, if she had the potential to do this, then so do I. Either because I see myself in her because I'm a young South Asian woman, or oh, she's done a little bit in this area and I want to dabble in that. So I think that's what keeps me going. And a lot of people ask, like, why do you think like that? Or even today, actually, I had a conversation with a very dear friend, Sarah, and she was saying, she's also in the change making space. And she was saying, one of my friends asked me why. And I just paused because I've always lived this way and I didn't have an answer. And I was like, it's almost the same answer for me. It's like the reason I live this way is because I can't see myself living any other way. Or if you think about it, like with hat and the outfit, like I can't see myself not wearing any of these hats because that wouldn't be Sanskriti and that wouldn't be the most fulfilled and happy version of me. And I think my dad always says, you know, like sometimes when I go through my like mental breakdown phase, like, oh my gosh, like, am I capable enough? Am I going to actually do it? He's always like, A, you are already doing it. You have already built legacy. And B, if you weren't capable, then that seed would not have been planted in you in the first place. And I think that is so grounding for me to constantly remind myself. So it's kind of like if any of these cups were empty, like if my creativity cup was empty, then a bit of me would go away. If my advocacy cup was empty, a little bit of me would go away. And so I think when it comes to a career, I've never really seen life as, oh, I have to have a 9 to 5 and then all my other stuff. It's kind of like I really hope that by pushing the status quo and adamantly taking risks and avoiding like a typical trajectory, I can have a life that lets me do everything I love. At the same time, and have a very dynamic career where I am a writer and I am a dancer and I am a businesswoman all in one. And yeah, like you said, I really like what you said about, you know, like it's better to try than not do anything at all when you have a dream, because I heard someone say once, it's always better an oops than a what if. I think an oops is always like recoverable. You can always be like, oh, wow, I really suck at that. Not going to do it again. But like the thought of living your life with a what if, or like being like maybe 60 years old and being like, oh my God, what if I had done this when I was 20 scares me so much that it's almost like that fear propels me to just like try things. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so there's so much in there which is so beautiful. And I think, you know, first of all, a shout out to your dad for reminding you that you are doing these things here. And if you didn't have the seed, you wouldn't have been thinking this way. And so, you know, that's a shout out to your dad, but also a shout out to you that you have to have those reflection points, but also the fact that hey, we're not you're not always hunky dory and smiling every single day. There are days when you doubt yourself because you know so many times they go, oh, Sanskriti's got it all sorted down pat, but hey, you're just human and you're going to go through the same emotions as everyone else. You're going to doubt yourself, imposter syndrome, all those things there, because that's you know if we didn't have that, we would not be humans, you know. And it's very hard when someone says, I don't, oh, you don't, I don't know. Everyone has that. It's at some level, at some level. And also I reflect back about what you just said before when your friend's friend asked why, and you notice the reaction you had because at the start that was what I was reflecting on. When somebody asks why, you feel like you've got to defend yourself or you've got to validate yourself, which is a crazy question. And so you go, wait a minute. So my answer now is going to be why not? Why not? And they're like, oh, because that's
Why
straight
not?
away just it's deflecting it back to them like why not, and like oh yeah, oh you just disarm somebody straight away. So if somebody asks you that, just
Yeah.
go why not, and then oh, see what they say.
Yeah, that's so great.
Yeah. um Now you mentioned something that I want to touch on as well. You know, you spoke about you have all these awesome hats that you wear, but one of the other hats that you wear amongst all this other stuff is you are a student, and you are still a student, which means you still have to go to class and do the things that you need to do in that space there. And how does that work for you? Because you know, being a law student, a double degree student is not is you've got a lot of work to do and you've got to maintain grades. And then you also have this other busy life. You know, what is that like for you? And how do you look after yourself in that context?
Yeah. You know, it definitely is difficult. I think it has taken me a long time to learn how to look after myself. Um, my partner will probably still say I don't do a very good job at it, but I think one part is having very, very good people around me. That just like it's like the little things. Like I talk very fondly of my partner because I feel like he genuinely is my rock and that he not only is brilliant in what he does, you know, he's an engineer and he's very involved in youth work as well. It's like the small things like, have you eaten today? Or like, hey, like you've been doing all these projects, do you have time for a coffee? Because I think that something that I pride myself on is my communication. Like if you are a part of my family, my close friends, or like someone that I love, like I will not like take more than an hour to reply. And I feel like that's so important to me because it's like, you know, like you're not a celebrity, or even if you are like a celebrity and like you're known, like you still should have time for the people that you love. And so I think the thing I get back from them is just like being looked after and remembering kind of to do the small things. Um, I think something else in terms of self care that I have learned very, very recently, thanks to Y25 and a lot of the girls and mentors, is learning how to take guilt free rest. Like, I think this happens to a lot of people that have like a can do attitude in like whatever sphere. They just can't take guilt free rest. Like, resting, I realize, does not mean planning. Resting does not mean thinking of what you're going to do after the rest. It means like actually just taking a chill pill and like binging a Netflix show or like eating your favorite like ice cream and like doing absolutely nothing. And so I think I've really learned to embrace that. And I've honestly found that it helps my mental health so much more, and it helps me do my work better as well. And then in terms of my degree, I think what's kind of sad is that a lot of like brown or like they see people have this thing of you must have done law because it had to be law, med, or engineering. But like, okay, I actually wanted to, and that's what's so sad, because people are like, you probably got bullied into it by your parents. But I'm like, no, like my parents are the most non-conventional brown parents. They're so chill. Like they just told me whatever you do it with passion. Like they did not care what it was. They told me and my brother the same thing. And like I think just learning knowledge in academia is something I'm very passionate about. Like it sounds so nerdy, but I'm like a loud and proud nerd. I love reading. I love learning about the world, whether it's like art, history, anything. And so I think the reason I took law is because I do not want to be a lawyer like by practice. So I think that would drain a bit of my creativity. But I think the skills that law gives you, whether it's negotiation, looking at foreign diplomacy, looking at how the world works, is so important, especially for me if I want to go into international business, which is something I'm very, very keen on. Because I think that just very nicely kind of puts in a basket my languages, my love for travel, my business skills, and my legal skills. Law is so, so helpful to have. And I'm very passionate about that, like project management, doing things that can lead to change. And so I think education is really important for me. And that's why it does, I guess that's why I do it, right? And so maintaining that with all this other stuff has been really hard. But I think sometimes I like see my life in those different cups, like I was saying. So if any of those cups aren't like being filled, it's like a little part of me gets sad and wonders, oh, I could have been doing that. It definitely is hard, like to be very transparent. It's really hard to kind of balance. It's really hard to make time for yourself, because I think I am often a very, very easy victim of burnout. And yeah, I think you don't realize how bad burnout is until you get to that stage. So it happened to me after Auckland Mall United Nations. It always happens like at the end of a semester. It's like your body physically gives up on you. Like your brain will still be wanting to do these things, like hop onto meetings, but like my body physically would be like unable to move. Like I'd be tired, just like in bed. And so now I've learned to kind of integrate more self-care into my actual like daily routines, which has been so nice. And like it's super simple. It's literally like in the morning when I wake up, like I will not check my phone for like the first hour. And in the night before I sleep, again, like my phone is just off like for the hour before. And I'll be like reading or I'll be doing my own thing. And just having that like mental sanity is so, so important and so nice. So yeah, that's kind of how I guess I'm trying to balance everything. I don't think I'm the best at self-care still, but I'm trying to get there. Yeah.
It's so interesting that you said that, because basically most of our guests that have jumped on this podcast have said the exact same thing, because they're all trying to do some all these pretty cool things, and amongst all those cool things, the one cool thing they forget about is looking after themselves,
Yeah.
which is number one, and when I work with young people, I always speak about, this. We have two circles in our life. We have the circle that we're engaging in all the time, and there's a circle that we engage from. And most of the time, we forget about the circle that we engage from. We talk about cups, but I like to use the word engaging, because you're always engaging out, especially when you're someone like you. And I was like, hey, you've got to engage with yourself first before you can engage out. And why I use that is because you used a great term there. You said guilt-free rest. And guilt-free rest is 100% engaging with yourself, 100% engaging with yourself, because you're not thinking about what's next. You're not thinking about, oh, is this bad? Is this good? So it's important, and it takes a lot of effort. For some people, they're always engaging themselves. This is great. This is fantastic. This is their life. This is fantastic, and this is great. This is awesome. It's for those who've got to go, hey, what about the rest of the world? Whereas it's awesome that you are become aware of it as well. And it takes time to do that there. Y25, what is that like for you?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Y25 was like surreal. Like that's the one word I use to describe it. So essentially, like last year, I kind of seen the program progress and I'd seen like a few people that I know who got selected from it. And I was genuine. Like usually I would say I'm quite good in that I don't really suffer from imposter syndrome, which touch wood is good. Like I feel like like it sounds so bad, but like genuinely when people ask, like I have to be very like imposter syndrome and tall poppy syndrome are two syndromes that I just do not have, which I think is a good thing.
100%.
Yeah. And so, yeah, but I was still so worried because I just genuinely kind of shut off the idea of being accepted. I was like, there's the caliber of people applying is so high that I'm not even going to apply. And so the way it worked is through nomination. And so my partner actually ended up nominating me. And yeah, he just wrote like this massive spiel on what I do. And I was like, okay, great, like send it in. And then I was actually in a different country. So I was in Korea, like on a girls' trip, which I guess that's a form of self-care, travel. So me and my best friends are in Korea. And like at 6 in the morning, I remember one of the girls in charge called the lovely Jenna. And I thought it would be an interview. So I was like so stressed at 6 in the morning, although in South Korea. And she was like, no, you've got an in. And like the amount of happiness that I felt was just so surreal. And we recently had our launch, and I think there was a lot of nerves leading up to the launch because like I am an extrovert, but just like the idea of living with 24 girls for a weekend for the first time is so intimidating because I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm going to make friends. I don't know what the vibes are going to be. And like what I told them at the end of the retreat is that it's almost like I had lost a little bit of faith in love, like in platonic love, because last year was so hard for me where I lost quite a few people who I thought were my good friends, but they weren't really necessarily happy for me or supportive. So I had to do the hard thing of cutting them off. So it's almost like platonic heartbreaks are so sad because it's like you see these people being your bridesmaids one day and all of that. And so it was so beautiful because I was in a space with these 24 women who are so incredible in their own rights, but so grounded and humbled that they are able to be effortlessly happy for you. And it was almost like we'd all known each other for years. Like the age brackets were completely different, the walks of lives were different, but we all had this mutual love and understanding for being something and dreaming something. And it was just such a beautiful wananga. And now I have close connections with a lot of the girls. And it was such pride to be Indian and be the only Indian that was there and recognized with two other South Asian girls as well, from Bangladesh and Sri Lanka. And so it was just so beautiful being able to finally get that recognition for the work that I've done. Because sometimes, like, you know, especially in the youth space, it can go so unrecognized. Oftentimes it's, well, all the time almost, it's unpaid. And so it's just really nice to kind of have a platform where people are, you know, recognizing you, because that gives you the platform where you can inspire and where other people can kind of see you. So no, it's been absolutely beautiful and it's such a big blessing. And I think it's just made me really empowered for the future, but also very like comfortable in the people that I have supporting me on the way there.
Yeah, so it's a very, very powerful award movement. I don't know how to describe it, but it's really, really powerful because you know, like you said just before, we had Zoe on last week, and Zoe said the exact same thing that you said. She was like, "Who am I to be part of this year? And there's gonna be all these amazing people, and I'm gonna be, this is scary, you know." And it's we all live in that, you know. We don't realize, none of us realize how awesome we are when you are humble. You don't realize how awesome you are, and then when you put in another group of amazing people, you're actually, wait a minute, these are my people. This is my tribe, as they say, for because you all have the same vision going forward, whatever that vision is. It might manifest in different ways, but the vision comes from a place of change making, but also from a place of, as you use the keyword love for whatever that change is going to be. I think that's really beautiful and really important. So but also shout out to your partner for actually nominating you and putting you in, because without that, hey, let's be honest, right?
Yeah.
That's really, really, really awesome. And I guess now that you've had your cup filled with these amazing wahine, what is a project that you're working on, passionate about? I'm going to say for the next few, I'm not the next year, whatever, but what's something that's your thing at the moment? Because, you know, as you said at the start, we don't have no idea what's going to happen here, but right now, what's driving you as apart from study?
Yeah. Funnily enough, it is a podcast because I have been meaning to start one for like the longest time, like 4 years, and I just never have. And so what happened at the retreat is that I'm such a big like yapper, like a talker. So I was just talking to people and like sprinkling it here and there. And all of the girls were like, why do you not have one? Like literally, like you have such great life advice and like things like that. Like why? And so now there's this constant, like every day I get a message from one of them being like, where is it? Why am I not seeing it? And so I think that's what I've kind of been like shaping together, but it also kind of goes hand in hand with the South Asian collective Jhumka Journey that me and my friend Harini started. Because I do little like clips on there. And so those are like, I guess, mini clips, like teasers to the future podcast, like just ranting about like whether it's British colonization in India or like, oh, what is Kajal and what is the historical significance. So that's been really fun. So I think these next few months is like almost like Y25 was kind of like a reset in that I'm doing so much, but now I kind of like want to look even more into who I am. Like, who is Sanskriti? What would my dream life encapsulate? Because it's like, I know, but at the same time, I haven't actually written it down, you know? And maybe that's because there's this subtle fear of like, ooh, like writing it down makes it all real and scary. So I kind of want to like do that and be like, you know, if I want to do a podcast, give it a go. How can I grow Jhumka Journey? Or like, how can I kind of paint the life that I want and achieve it with tangible steps? It's kind of like I'm in a figuring out stage and then also like doing what I'm already doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think again, the question that you've actually said it yourself, what's the worst that could happen? You don't want to go, oops.
Yeah.
You go, hey, that's your own life advice right there, we come podcast next week. Done. We heard it here for the first time. But Jhumka Journey, tell us about that there. What is the motivation for starting that there? Because that's also very cool. I follow that page and you share some really cool and interesting tidbits on there.
Yeah, I think Jhumka Journey for me and Harini, because she's my beautiful Sri Lankan friend, just came from a lens of wanting to educate more people about South Asian culture. So obviously we have our walks of life, which is India and Sri Lanka, but we have a lot of other people from different parts of South Asia collaborating with us to create this content. And I think we just really wanted people to feel more connected with their culture. Like a lot of people don't know things. A lot of people like want to be in a space where it's like, oh, hey, I listen to that music, or hey, I do this as well. And it's just really wholesome because we kind of posted like not expecting a lot. And then we got 200 followers in like the first week. And we had so many DMs from like local creators and artisans, people that are in music, people that are in like spoken word poetry, being like, hey, we'd like to collaborate. We have things that we want to do. And so it's just really nice seeing that South Asian girls feel represented, seen, and heard, and boys as well. And just seeing people having this joint community collective where they're able to find like a home away from home almost. Yeah, so that's been really, really nice. We're looking to have our launch sometime next year, but up until then, we might have an event around Diwali. So that's really exciting.
That is very cool. And again, sometimes something that I've always thought about this. I was on a coaching call yesterday. It was a webinar, and something resonated with me when they just said sometimes the problem or the passion that you have is something that other people have as well, but they haven't been brave enough to put it out
Yeah.
there, right? So the fact that you just put it out there straight away, boom, it's really quite funny because we'll have ideas, but someone doesn't have the solution to that idea until one person puts it out there. Then boom, it just goes, hey, I should have thought about that. So it's really awesome that you're doing this here, and we'll see what happens with that venture there. So we'll keep our eyes peeled and ears. No, beautiful. Sanskriti, like I said at the start, there's so much we could go into, but it is Friday night, and I don't want to take up more of your time. We've been chatting for almost an hour, and it's been a really seamless conversation, which is beautiful. But we're not going to let you go just yet. Our podcast is called Baskets of Knowledge, and every week we invite our guests to share a piece of knowledge to put into our kite for myself, for Tanya, and for our listeners. And this can come from any aspect of your life. And again, I just want to acknowledge the fact that you've shared a lot already. But is there any pieces of knowledge that you just go, hey, this is from me?
Yeah, that is such a good question. Oh my goodness. I think this is something that I tell like anyone that I meet, whether it's a friend or whether it's someone younger, and they kind of like are feeling lost with life or like what they're doing or like what the purpose of like their life is. I think find something that genuinely stirs your soul. Like, and when I say stirs your soul, I mean like when you talk to other people about it, your eyes should light up, like your hands should be moving, like you should have visible excitement at this thing. Find something that stirs your soul, and once you find it, do not let it go. And the do not let it go part is equally important as the finding part, because that means that you're not going to succumb to society's expectations. That means you're not going to let anybody else write or dictate your path except yourself. And that means that even if it's hard, even if, things don't go your way and you end up in periods of feeling lost, you're going to persevere and you're going to continue to do this thing that stirs your soul because it means something to you. And I think like sometimes people, expect like a big fancy meaning of life, but it's as simple as, does it mean something to you? And if your answer is yes, go for it.
That is so beautiful, because find something that stirs your soul, but don't let it go. I think that the key part is that don't let it go, because we all find things that stir our soul. But as you said, we have those dream suckers who take away those dreams, and then you go, oh, maybe this is a bad idea. But and you're always gonna have naysayers. The world is full of naysayers. But if you have that, again, the why, and that's there, if you don't let it go, change can happen and I like what you said. Having a big change doesn't have to be super massive. It can just be in your world. And I always have this, I have a thought process where one change you make in your world can have a ripple effect to those around you, who are your world anyway. Beautiful. That is a beautiful piece of knowledge there. Thank you so much for that there. Sanskruti, you have been a fantastic person on our podcast. Any last words before I round off the podcast?
No, just, find something that stirs your soul, and don't forget to take rest and look after yourself.
Yeah, we'll be checking your
And
rest
thank you
in the
so
next few
much.
days. No worries.
Yes.
Thank you for jumping on. Fascinating. There's so much at the start. You spoke about the fact that you wear many hats, but as I listened to this here, and as I said before, all the hats only exist because they sit in a head that is passionate about each of those hats there. So it's really beautiful that you've shared some of this. We've only touched at the tip of the iceberg of the things that you do and you're passionate about, and also you're a daughter, you are a young person, you are all these other hats that you wear as well, which we have taken on as well. Thank you so much for jumping on. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for just being you, and we look forward to seeing what happens with all your cool things that you do over the next few months.
Awesome.
For our
Thank you
listeners
so
out there,
much.
no worries. For our listeners out there, hopefully you enjoyed today's session. If you haven't enjoyed it, then something's wrong with you. Go back and have a listen, because this is a episode full of some amazing wisdom and nuggets of knowledge. Till next time, don't forget to find a reason to smile, and don't forget to find at least one thing to put into your basket of knowledge. Till then, take care, be safe, ka kite. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to Baskets of Knowledge. Yeah, we hope that you found something useful to put into your basket of knowledge. And as we said before, remember to put something little into your baskets of knowledge every week. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and share this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Bye.